When we speak in English, we often use vague language to convey ideas without being too precise. For example, we might say or so to indicate an approximate amount, like 3 weeks or so. Similarly, we could use in the region of to suggest an approximate value, such as somewhere in the region of £100,000. If we're unsure about someone's occupation, we might say he's something to do with TV, or he works in publishing, I think. Another way to express uncertainty is by saying somewhere or something like that, as in she's a doctor or something like that. When discussing quantities, we might use loads of, like I have loads of stuff to prepare, or tons or piles of something. Or we could say give or take to indicate a margin of error, such as I've got £1,000, give or take a bit. If we want to refer to a variety of things, we might say all that stuff, or some great stuff. And if we're unsure about a specific number, we might use odd after it, like 30 odd. We also have somehow to indicate something happening in an uncertain manner. Lastly, if we want to suggest similarity or approximation, we might say something like that, something along those lines, or something of that sort. Overall, these phrases help us communicate in a flexible and approximate manner, allowing for smoother conversations. 1. How long will you be away? 3 weeks or so. 2. He earns loads of money, doesn't he? Probably somewhere in the region of £100,000. 3. He has something to do with TV, isn't he? Yes, something like that. 4. She doesn't look well. Is she ill or something? I don't know. I'm sort of worried about her. 5. We will buy that car somehow or other. Well, I've got £1,000. Give or take a bit. 6. I've got loads of stuff to prepare. How many are coming? 50 odd, I think. 7. She's a doctor or something like that. He works in publishing, I think. 8. Yes, something along those lines. 9. He said they advise importers, something of that sort. In English, we often use passive constructions to shift the focus away from the doer of an action and onto the action itself or the recipient of the action. For instance, phrases like is said to be, is reported, and is known as are used to convey information without explicitly stating who is doing the action. For example, the minister is said to be considering resignation emphasizes the action of considering resignation without specifying who is saying it. Similarly, food supplies are reported to be arriving in the country highlights the action of arriving without indicating who is reporting it. Additionally, phrases like is known for and is known as are used to describe someone's reputation or identity. As in she is known for her generosity or he is known as a talented musician. Other passive constructions indicate intentional purpose, such as were meant to, as in they were meant to stay together, emphasizing the intended outcome. When we say the meeting is scheduled for next week, we're talking about an arrangement without mentioning who arranged it. Similarly, phrases like have been shortlisted for indicate inclusion in a small list, as in 4 have been shortlisted for the prize. Passive voice allows us to focus on the action itself rather than the doer, making our writing more objective and impersonal. Furthermore, passive constructions can indicate authority or empowerment, as in residents are empowered by the new law, suggesting that residents have been given the power or authority to do something. Another example is the body will be cremated, which describes the process of the body being burned, especially as part of a funeral ceremony. In legal or punitive contexts, passive constructions like has been jailed and have been suspended from are used to indicate actions taken against individuals, without specifying who took the action. For instance, The man has been jailed for robbery emphasizes the outcome of being jailed without mentioning who jailed him. Similarly, 2 girls have been suspended from school highlights the action of being suspended without indicating who suspended them. Lastly, passive constructions like was overcome with and were caught up in describe states or experiences without specifying who caused them. For example, I was overcome with grief emphasizes the feeling of grief without mentioning what caused it. Similarly, we were caught up in a traffic jam highlights the experience of being stuck in traffic without indicating who caused the jam. Overall, passive constructions are versatile tools in English that allow us to convey information in a clear and objective manner, without always specifying who is performing the action. I hope this passage helps clarify the usage of passive constructions. Let me know if you have any questions or if there's anything else I can assist you with. Alright, let's dive into the wild world of pre-suffixes with adjectives. First up, we have unqualified. Picture this, your friend thinks they're a Formula 1 driver, but really, they're unqualified to drive that car. Maybe they failed their driving test a million times, who knows? Next, we've got unknown. Imagine your favorite movie casts an unknown actor for the lead role. You're like, oh, maybe they blew all their budget on special effects. Now, onto unfamiliar. You're at your grandma's house trying to use her ancient typewriter. You're like, I'm unfamiliar with this keyboard. She's like, back in my day, we typed with style. Moving along, we've got uncharacteristic. Your buddy is always the life of the party, but one day, they make an uncharacteristic mistake. You're like, oh, you don't have character, bro. Just kidding, we all mess up sometimes. Next, we've got unofficial. Picture this, the workers decide to call an unofficial strike. You're scratching your head, like, which strike? It would be official. Now, onto unfinished. You walk into your friend's house and see half-painted walls. You're like, okay, they may be lazy. Or maybe they're just taking a really long coffee break. Moving on, we've got incapable of. Your indecisive friend Ben can never make up his mind. You're like, yeah, maybe he's incapable of making a decision. Or maybe he just can't decide. Now, onto invalid. You're at the airport and your passport gets rejected. You're like, oh, okay. Maybe I'm living in a very destroyed and undeveloped country. Poor me. Next, we've got insufficient. You're at a party and the food is barely enough to feed a mouse. You're like, oh no, not enough food? That's a disaster. Maybe they forgot to invite the hungry people. Now, onto incompatible. Your friends break up because they realize they're incompatible. You're like, oh well, it's better to find out now than after you're married. Moving along, we've got inhuman. You hear about the inhuman treatment of animals at the zoo. You're like, that's not cool, man. Those animals deserve better. Now, onto disloyal. The Prime Minister fires any disloyal ministers. You're like, ooh, political drama. Who's next? Next up, we've got disobedient. You hear about one disobedient child getting removed from class. You're like, uh-oh, someone's in trouble. And finally, we've got unemployed. Your friend has been looking for a job for months with no luck. You're like, welcome to the club, buddy. We should start a support group for the unemployed and underemployed. And there you have it, a hilarious journey through the land of pre-suffixes with adjectives. Remember, language learning is always better with a dash of humor. Prefixes with verbs. Once upon a time in the quirky town of Mix-Upville, there lived a group of friends who always seemed to find themselves in the most amusing predicaments. One sunny morning, they decided to throw a picnic in the park. As they unpacked their basket, one friend misunderstood the picnic blanket for a tablecloth and spread it out on the grass. "Oops, I think I may have misunderstood the purpose of this blanket," they chuckled. Meanwhile, another friend attempted to unwrap the sandwiches, only to find that they had mistaken the napkins for bread. "Well, I guess we'll be eating napkins today," they laughed. As the picnic got underway, someone misjudged the amount of sunscreen needed and ended up looking like a lobster by the end of the day. Note to self, never underestimate the power of the sun, they groaned. Just as they were about to dig into dessert, someone realized they had forgotten the plates. "Looks like we'll have to redo our picnic setup," they sighed, as they scrambled to rewrite their plans. But the hilarity didn't stop there. As they attempted to reassess their situation, one friend accidentally untied the balloon strings, sending them soaring into the sky. "Well, there go our decorations," they laughed. As the day turned into night, they decided to unwind with a movie marathon. But as they settled in, they realized they had overcharged the popcorn machine and ended up with enough popcorn to last a lifetime. "I guess we overestimated our snack needs," they chuckled, as they settled in for an oversleeping movie night. And so, as the stars twinkled above and laughter filled the air, our friends learned that sometimes, the best moments in life are the ones filled with misunderstandings, misjudgments, and laughter. After all, it's the mishaps that make life truly memorable. Mislead, give somebody the wrong impression and make them believe something that is not true.